Well, once again, welcome to the View from the Inside podcast, episode number 7. I'm Kevin Richardson, your host, and I always say I'm fired up about the guests that I have, but this guy I'm super excited about. You see him on NBC News, you see him on CNBC, see him on Bloomberg, maybe one of my favorite channels, and I just admitted how geeky I am. But I want to welcome Jeff Lanza. He's an expert in cybercrime and fraud. And Jeff, thanks so much for spending some time with us and doing this podcast. Appreciate having you on.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kevin. It's really a pleasure to be here and talk about these things as well.
Well, so I thought it would be fun. We always like doing the origin story on this podcast. And maybe you could tell us, what career you had that qualifies you to be a cybercrime and fraud expert.
Well, I was a 20-year veteran of the FBI. I mean, I spent 20 years with the Bureau in the Kansas City office of the FBI. And for most of my career, I was involved in white-collar crime. Wait, that doesn't sound right. I investigated white-collar crime. I wasn't involved in it. But one type of white-collar crime is cybercrime. And so in working those cases, in working fraud, and trying to understand the mind of a criminal, I think that's what gives me kind of the insight into what they're doing today. And so I focus when I go out and give speeches and do podcasts like this. I like to focus on how people can stay safe, not talk about how good the criminals are and all the stuff they do. I like to talk about what we can do to stay safe from the criminals.
Right. Well, so when we talk about staying safe, we've got processes we use here at Tactical Wealth Management and LPL Financial. It's our broker dealer. Mm-hmm. And I thought maybe we would go at this from the lens of being a client, because I know if we engage with somebody and we're trying to get paperwork put together and get things started, if you will, the first thing we're doing is we're sending something over to be signed electronically via either DocuSign or Adobe. And I know a lot of times some clients will say, well, gosh, isn't this more risky than you just putting the paperwork in the mail and we sign it and send it back to you? There's no way for that to get hacked. But I know you have some very strong opinions about when Social Security numbers and dates of birth go in the mail. That's kind of a scary thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, criminals steal mail all the time. They steal it from mailboxes at a home where you put the flag up, and they get it before the post office comes to pick it up. They use that for the mail for they steal checks and use it for check washing, or they steal those documents that you're talking about, and that can lead to a whole lot of more fraud, after that occurs. Even if you take an item to the post office and deposit it in an exterior blue box on a street or at the post office itself, it's still vulnerable to being intercepted at some point. The post office does do a lot to protect the mail, but they can't protect it 100% of the time. I think electronic methods are not only more convenient, they're safer as long as you do things to keep your computer safe and on the end of the receiver and the end of the sender. And I know you're doing a lot on your end to make sure that those transactions are secure.
Well, yeah. So if we slide into that, I know probably on sometimes a daily basis, we'll get an email from a client that's maybe set up for ACH transfers or they want a wire completed for them. And boy, the first thing we do is we pick up the phone and, hey, Jeff, thanks for the email. We're just going to confirm that we're doing XYZ. We always feel like that's a great protocol. It's part of compliance. But what we're really trying to do is make sure that we don't end up sending money someplace that it shouldn't go. That's probably got to be something that we need to explain better to the clients on why we have that follow-up phone call.
Yeah, that's so important because, we become so comfortable with email that we feel like it's okay to send those kind of instructions in terms of wiring money and doing other things. But what happens is criminals target electronically the email accounts of of individuals, and they may intercept an email that involves a transfer of money or some communication that involves transfer of money, and then they will request these wire transfers be sent to a different account than they were supposed to be sent to, or just say, I want to make a transfer where there was no transaction before that or no communication before that. And as a financial advisor or anyone that's guarding and managing the wealth of a client, you have a responsibility to make sure that's not going to be sent to someone based on just an email request, because of those email accounts get hijacked and you get a lot of criminals making those requests that clients have no idea that's happening. So you have to make that phone call. It's so important that you do that. In fact, just where I'm today in Connecticut, I was talking to a neighbor. They were selling their house, and the buyer wire transferred the entire amount of the payment of the purchase price of the house minus the down payment, which had already been paid, to a fraudulent an account that had been set up, and the criminals basically intercepted the communication and said, wire the money for this house to this place. And it was $750,000. They showed up for the closing. They said, where's your money for the closing? They said, we wired it per your instructions. And they said, we didn't give you instructions to wire it. And it was a total loss. Just happened within the past couple of months right here in my neighborhood. So that's why you make the phone call. You always have to verify, and that's to protect the client.
Well, and then the other thing that we find a lot is almost every account that we open now, we'll offer up and say, hey, let's do e-delivery for your statements. And I know a lot of times the clients will kind of feel like, oh, well, gosh, is LPL trying to save some money delivering these statements? And whether that's the case or not, I don't know, and I don't care. I just know, reading your stuff, they're much better off with e-delivery, because even though those statements don't have a social security number on them, they've got account numbers and all of that info that, if I understand things correctly in their world, that gives them a look into, hey, if this guy's got $1 million, let's keep working this person, because we know that there's money to go get, right? So e-delivery may be the way to go.
Yeah, I think they target those items in incoming mail and in trash, if they're not shredded properly in trash. And the reason why they do that is to basically steal information, but also target people for a specific amount of money, and also know where they have their wealth, what bank they have their money in, what wealth advisor they're using. And so then they can target not only specific amounts, but specific phishing emails designed to trick them that look like you're coming from those organizations. So e-delivery is a much better option. Yeah, it may save some money, it may save some trees, but the main thing I talk about, and I think it's important, even more important than that, is it helps prevent fraud. Now, you keep your computer safe. We could talk about that if you want. You have strong passwords, and you do the right things to keep your devices safe, including your mobile devices. And if you've done that, you're getting them in the mail is much more risky than getting them delivered online. Plus, and this is something that people always tell me when I go do client events, I'm presenting to clients, they go, I want to have that piece of paper in my hand. I want to hold the piece of paper. But then you have to figure out, well, where am I storing that? First of all, it's vulnerable to theft in the mail system. Then where am I storing that at home? How am I shredding that properly so they don't get a hold of that as well? And then when you start to use the electronic methods, it's actually a lot more fun, because you can search and you can save things. And the search functions alone make it so much easier than looking through paper to try to find some past transaction, right?
Right.
I mean, so there's that aspect too, besides just fraud prevention.
Well, so talking about passwords, whether it's passwords for your email or for your computer, I know there's a right way and a wrong way to do that. I know I've heard people tell me, well, gosh, I use the same password for everything, which I kind of then cringe. But talk about the right way to use a password, whether it's for your email or for your computer.
Yeah. So let's talk about, first of all, why you don't use the same password for everything, because a lot of people don't understand that. They want the convenience of having one password. They don't have to remember one password, and they use that for everything. So let's say that someone has tricked you into clicking on a phishing email. They hijack your email account. They're inside your email account, and they see you're getting emails from a credit card company or a banking institution, and they say, oh, I wonder if they use the same password for this account that they have set up. And so then they go to that site, the credit card company site, for example, they put in the same password, and they're in that as well. That's called credential stuffing, and it's a crime that's been around for a while. And where I worked for the FBI in Kansas City, that exact thing happened to the tune of multiple victims, thousands and thousands of dollars in losses because people were using the same passwords for different sites. And that's what you want to avoid. You want to have a unique password for every site. Now, I know a lot of people listening to this are saying, I'm not doing that because I got 50 accounts. How am I going to keep track of 50 different passwords? So here's what you may do. Consider using a passphrase instead of a password. So a password would be, you use something like uppercase A, lowercase c, 5679, question mark, $, to make it complex like most places require. Or a passphrase might be something like, free delivery is something I like from Amazon. And that's your long passphrase that you have for Amazon. So, and it's easy to remember because it's specific for Amazon. All right. Or for a bank, you may say, I trust my bank to keep my money secure. And if you need to put uppercase and lowercase, you can do that as well. But it encourages you to do something unique so you're not vulnerable to credential stuffing. Plus, a passphrase is long enough to not be vulnerable to brute force hacking, which a criminal can get access to an account by using powerful software and computers to crack shorter passwords. So that you're getting multiple benefits with passphrases, and it keeps you safe from this type of thing that I'm talking about.
Now, on the passphrase, should you use also some numbers and some symbols? I know a lot of times when I go to plug in a password, they'll make you use a symbol and a couple of numbers and upper and lower case.
Yeah. Actually, there's a government agency, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST for short, that recommended years ago that we move away from passwords and all the complexity because it makes people just try to use one password because they can't remember all the complexity. And is recommending that we only use passphrases with no complexity whatsoever as long as it's at least 12 characters long. But you go to the Social Security site, the Social Security SSA.gov to set up your My Social Security account. That's a government agency, just like NIST, but they force you to use the complexity. So, not everybody agrees with that philosophy. So yes, you can create a password, a phrase, and then put the complexity in. Make a letter capital. Put some numbers at the end. But Kevin, the average person has about 50 online accounts. You still can't remember all your passphrases. So you need something to help you with that. And we could talk about that as well if you want to get into the deep dive on this.
Yeah, keep going because I always see those services where you can buy a service where you only need the one password and then that leads to, that manages the rest of your online password.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah. So just take any kind of any one of those names, that you see advertised, LastPass and Keeper and Dashlane. You pay them a few dollars a month. Generally, it's about $30 a year, and they manage your passwords or phrases for you. They'll create strong ones for you. You don't even have to know what they are, and they'll plug them in every time when you go to that particular site. I think that money is well spent. First of all, it's a strong enough password to not get cracked. They're unique for each account, and they make it easy because they store them for you. And I think that's one of the best methods of utilizing password management. In the old days, when we just had 2 or 3 online accounts, I mean, you had, it was easy. And now Kevin, everything you do online, you have to set up an account. You go on vacation, you want to hold your mail. All right. The post office says you can't call us. You got to do it online. You go online, they say you have to set up an account. So you have an account for that. You want to get something at Home Depot, order it online. You got to have an online account. And you can do it as a guest, but that creates issues too. So every transaction that you get involved in, it's a new password. So that method, those companies that offer that service is very valuable, I believe, because of this long list of passwords that we have in our lives.
Now, what about two-factor authentication? So I know with a lot of things, when I log on, they'll send a code to my cell phone. I love that. Is that safer than just a password?
It's not only doubly safe, it's probably more than doubly safe because the criminals can't be, they could be 6 miles away, they could be 6,000 miles away. Even if they've got your password, and it may not even be your fault. I mean, somebody may have had a breach and they can't log in because that code comes to your device. That's called multi-factor authentication or two-factor authentication. That's such an important way we can keep those accounts safe. And I know it's an extra step, Kevin, right?
Right.
Nobody likes extra steps, right?
Right.
You're logging into your financial account. Oh, we're going to send a code to your phone or a code to your email account. Which do you prefer? And you're like, all right, now I got to do this again. But you know what? I'd rather do that than have somebody get access to that account. So, and it's just an extra step that just takes a few seconds, but it makes me feel much more secure. I think people should have that for not only your financial accounts, but also social media and email accounts. That keeps those accounts safe as well. And I think it's absolute requirement to because there's so many criminals out there trying to get our information and get into those accounts. And multi-factor authentication has prevented a lot of that access.
Now, I know watching or reading some of your stuff, I didn't realize this and it made total sense. Talk about the risk of a social media account where you've got your birthday plugged in and there's
Yeah.
mug shots of you and all those things, right? Criminals will get into that and then use that info to access other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they build the profiles, and they could start that profile building with birth dates and pictures, and then that could lead to more information. And each piece of information that they gain leads to more information potentially, and then it could lead to the wholesale stealing of an identity. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you that. Hey, don't tell people when it's your birthday on social media because people like to get birthday greetings.
Right.
People like to know that you've gone on vacation. They like to tell people they've gone on vacation. They're currently on vacation in Europe and away from their home. And by the way, this is where I live, maybe not the exact address, but close enough where they can find it. All right. All of that is a risk with social media. And so we should try to limit that, what we put out there. But also only let your friends see your social media page, right? We're not letting strangers get access to that. Restrict your profiles to only people you have approved to get that information. So that'd be one way to limit that as well. I like to tell people we've been on vacation after we've been on vacation, not to post that, on social media as well. And Kevin, the other thing about social media that's starting to really be disturbing is that they're using that platform to convince others to do bad things. For example, you may hijack a social media account as a criminal and then act like you're the person who's the victim of this hijacking, and then contact all their friends and say, I'm in Europe and I lost my wallet got stolen. I didn't tell you I was going. It was a last minute thing, but I need money sent to this place so I can get home. Little things like that. Or it could be more serious than that, where they talk about investments and I made so much money on this virtual currency investment. It only costs 3 cents right now, but it's going to go crazy. Why don't you go ahead and invest in that too? And here's how you do it. And if you get a message like that from somebody on social media, it's not coming from your social media friend. It's coming from the scammer who hijacked their account. That type of thing too is being used. Also, they'll impersonate financial advisors or investment gurus that are on some of the networks, and they'll act like they're them, and they'll say, I got this great product for you to invest in, and they get tricked that way as well. And by switching them over to WhatsApp or some secure messaging service where they can trick them in all sorts of ways without having it traced to them, because that's a secure and anonymous messaging service. That type of thing all begins with social media.
Well, so another thing that I wanted to ask you about is we've got as a practice, what we will do is we'll help clients with their estate planning, their insurance planning, their retirement planning, their tax planning. But when we're doing retirement planning, a big component of that is Social Security.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's always the big mystery for everyone. They have no idea how much they're going to get and when they get it and when they should take it and all those different things. But the thing that I wanted to ask you about was, I know that you'll recommend when people turn 62 that they go onto the Social Security website, if I'm understanding this correctly, and you can correct me, and enroll and have a Social Security account, because then you can't be hijacked, aka someone can't steal your identity and start to pull Social Security payments if you have an account open. We always recommend that they open it so you can go in, access the statements that tell you what you're going to get, and we can build a financial plan. But you're actually saying, if I understand it correctly, to protect yourself, you want to have that account open.
Yeah, and that's a really good idea for Social Security accounts for starters, because if you don't have a Social Security account set up, someone can set one up using a stolen identity. So let's say let's say I don't have an account set up. I do, but let's say I
Right.
didn't. Someone gets my social and they set one up, and I'm eligible to collect benefits at this point in my life, but I'm not at this point. But they say, hey, I'm going to sign up for a Social Security account using Jeff Lanza's identity. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to say, let's have Jeff Lanza's Social Security benefits initiated starting today with the money sent to this bank account. And now I have no idea this is happening. And then 3 years later, I find out that someone's getting Social Security benefits using my identity. That's a big mess to unwind with the Social Security Administration.
Yeah.
Can you imagine all the variables that go into when you collect money, how it affects your future benefits and spousal benefits? You know all about that as a financial advisor. Imagine trying to go back in time with the Social Security Administration and reversing all of that because it was fraudulent.
Right.
So if you have an account set up, then they can't do that, because that account, you can only set up one account. So it's set up, it's secured with a strong password or passphrase. They can't get in it to set it up, even if they had my information. That's why you set that up. In addition to what you said, because you can't, Social Security Administration doesn't mail paper to you anymore. You can't say to someone, bring in your last couple of statements you got from the Social Security Administration, because they're not mailing them to you anymore. So there.
Yeah. And then, we also remind everybody when you go do that, the one thing that I do know from our end is when you go to open that Social Security account, the way that your name reads on your Social Security card is the way you have to plug it into the website when you go to enroll. If you don't, you'll get locked out. Then you got to go in person to get that opened up.
I'm glad you mentioned that to people, because then you got to go physically to a Social Security office and wait in line and do all that stuff. So yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, I can't imagine having to do that. Okay, so the other thing that I think is really misunderstood, and I'm hoping you can enlighten us a little bit, but you have not 3 credit reporting agencies, but 4, and they're listed on a PDF that you have on your website, and we'll reference that before we go.
Yeah.
But if one goes in to freeze their credit, you go to those credit reporting agencies and shut things off. Explain that process, the pluses and minuses of doing that.
Yeah, it's actually very easy. So to freeze your credit reports. Now, consider this, that our Social Security number is probably for sale. It's on the dark web. There's been so many breaches involving socials. So when somebody wholesales your information, the person who buys it, then they're going to use it to open up credit card accounts or get loans in your name. But they can't do that if you've frozen your credit reports. So that's why we freeze credit reports to begin with, right? To prevent those accounts from being open. So how do you freeze your credit reports? On the document you mentioned, which I put on my website, there's the listing of the 4 credit reporting agencies, but specifically their addresses, websites. I mean, the websites where you go to freeze your credit reports. That's where you go to do it. And I've done this myself. It only takes about 5 minutes for each one. You go to the sites, you freeze your credit reports, and then no one can open credit card accounts in your name because those credit reports are frozen. You can lift the freeze to get a credit card account yourself, or to get a loan, or to get any type of thing that revolves a credit check. You can get that, no problem. You just lift the freeze temporarily. But the pluses of doing it are a long list of pluses. They can't open accounts in your name. They can't get loans in your name. Basically, it takes profit away from the criminals who will be less likely to be victimized. That if there's any negative at all to it, you have to take one extra step if you want to get credit checked yourself, and that is to lift the freeze for the agency where they're checking your credit. I've done that myself, and it only takes a few minutes. No big deal. But it does keep you protected from many types of fraud. So go to, and don't forget, you mentioned the 4th credit reporting agency. Most people know about Experian and TransUnion and Equifax. Those are big names. There's a 4th one called Innovis. And you should freeze that one too. It's not a big one, but it could be used to check your credit. So just freeze that one as well. And you have all 4 of them frozen for every person in your family, including kids who can be victims of identity theft. You can freeze their reports too by creating it and freezing it if they're not an adult yet. Lots of ways to keep people safe involving freezing credit reports.
And if you freeze your credit report, to be clear, it doesn't affect your credit score, correct?
Has no effect on your credit score or any of your current credit card relationships. It doesn't lock you out of your current relationships that you have. It doesn't affect if you have a current home equity loan, a car loan, credit card relationship. It's not going to stop any of that. That doesn't change. It just keeps new accounts from being opened in your name without your permission. And that's the whole idea behind freezing your credit reports. And it's free, which I think we've already mentioned.
And again, we'll give everybody the info on how to get the PDF from your website before we're done. So the last question, this one jumped out at me when I was prepping for this podcast. You talk about if you've got Wi-Fi at your home and you've got teenage kids on that Wi-Fi, you might be doing a good thing for yourself if you set up a different Wi-Fi for the kids. Is that because the traffic that a teenager is going to bring in via Wi-Fi is going to be so much different?
Yes, I think that's they might be on sites, gaming sites, and other sites where they're more prone to get malware on a computer, and that could propagate to another computer that's on the same network. So for a Wi-Fi network, you want to segment that if you can by having either 2 separate networks or just even a guest network for the kids to sign into, and so they can't propagate whatever malware they may get on a computer back into your computer that you might use for business or for your personal stuff.
Oh, makes great sense. Well, man, I appreciate you crawling through all these topics with us.
Yeah.
Your website, to say it's robust is an understatement. I know you've got 2 books listed there on your website that you've written in your career, and you've got a PDF that is, I believe, 5 pages now and pure gold. Talk about that PDF and the website. I want to make sure I get it right. thelanzagroup.com, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's thelanzagroup.com, LANZA group. And basically, that PDF is developed over the years based on the information that I talk about in my in-person events or webinars that I do. And this is all the stuff that I talk about, and people that are watching me present in person at a nice dinner or even a webinar that they may be attending home, and they don't want to have to write down everything because I cover a lot. So I put it all to them. I said, this is it. And that's available on my website. I cover all these points and a lot more stuff, just as a reminder to what people have heard in person or at webinars, or to have later on, and they say, what was the name of that 4th credit reporting agency? And it's right there for them, that kind of stuff. And it's free. I offer it for free. I don't ask any money for that. You go to my website and just click on handouts, and you can get that. You can download that as a PDF file.
Well, thank you so much. Well, gosh, thanks for your time. Again, this is great info for our clients, our prospects, or just anybody listening to the podcast. And gosh, thanks for all the work you're doing on behalf of all of us that are out there with those 50 passwords trying to navigate life in 2024. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Okay, Kevin.
Well, I want to thank Jeff for being on the show. Remember, the best thing you can do is follow us or share the podcast. If you got a financial question, you can sure give us a buzz, 831-717-1144, or you can send us an email, krichardson@tacwealth.com. On behalf of Jeff Lanza, our producer, Bill Tucker, and the good people at Proudmouth. Thanks, and so long for now.
Thank you for listening to the View from the Inside podcast with Kevin Richardson. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. To ask questions about topics covered during the show, head over to www.tacwealth.com. And don't forget to check the show notes for additional contact information. Kevin Richardson is a registered representative with and securities offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. The opinions voiced in this podcast are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine which strategies or investments may be suitable for you, consult the appropriate qualified professional prior to making a decision. Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards Center for Financial Planning Incorporated owns and licenses the certification marks CFP, Certified Financial Planner, and CFP with plaque design in the United States to Certified Financial Planner Board of Standards Incorporated, which authorizes individuals who successfully complete the organization's initial and ongoing certification requirements to use the certification marks.